Mask of a Diva, a Stan Kraychik mystery, Book 4, 1994. Author, Grant Michaels. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York. Author, Eric Aust. For all the divas, operatic and otherwise. Chapter 15. By 6:30, I was back at the big house for cocktails. Daphne and the maestro were in the library where a welcoming fire was burning in the fireplace. Even in early June, a fire helped break the chill of the ocean air at night. Daphne was pacing on the Persian carpet while the maestro lounged in a tufted leather armchair, smoking. From Daphne's tone of voice, I sensed a storm of artistic temperament was looming with one of the guests. Namely, the diva, Madame Ostinata, had returned to the estate earlier that day, and sensed that Jonathan Byers had rehearsed the second cast singers in exactly the same scene that she and Bruce David had just done. Without so much as a hello to Daphne, Madama had stormed upstairs to her quarters and had spent the remainder of the afternoon on the telephone, transatlantic to her lawyer in Milano. "And at my expense," roared Daphne. Apparently, Madama was seeking adequate grounds for suing Jonathan Byers for mental cruelty and the festival itself for unprofessionalism. "She told you that?" I said from the liquor cart. I had just poured myself a martini from a crystal decanter that was set in a matching bowl of shaved ice. Daphne replied sharply, "I heard her on the extension, and don't look at me like that. I didn't listen on purposely. I do have the right to use the telephone in my own house, you know." Then she spewed, "Unprofessionalism! Why, the woman could hardly pronounce the word." I'd never seen Daphne in such a highly charged state, and the cheap shot at Madama's accent was so unlike her that I knew there was more at stake than just a telephone bill. To show Daphne whose side I was on, I remarked that Madama's fluency in English did seem to change according to whoever's patronage she was soliciting at the moment. Ignoring my comment, Daphne went on. "Here I am, an opera lover, wanting simply to be a good hostess and a patroness of the arts, to do something finely for the performing arts that I have loved throughout my life, and now one of my distinguished guests wants to sue me. Oh, if only I'd known." I could relate to that sentiment. The maestro, meanwhile, turned his gaze from the fireplace and looked toward Daphne with warming, caring eyes. "Cara mademoiselle," he said serenely, "do not worry. There will be no lawyers. Marcella sees herself growing old. She hears it in her voice, and she is angry. She wants to be a young girl again, and she cannot make that happen. So now she thinks the lawyers can fix it. But she has no power. It is her destiny. You are safe." Daphne stopped pacing and threw herself into the armchair opposite the maestro's. She looked miserable. I knew I was on shaky ground, but I wanted to help her, to comfort her. I pushed forward tentatively. "Daphne, is any of this related to what you discovered about Madama Ostinata the other day?" Daphne whirled at me as if I had betrayed her. Her eyes blazed with reflections from the hearth. Then she let out a long sigh of resignation that almost ended with a small laugh. "You are a devil," she said, "and I could despise you for seeing what I've denied myself. Of course, that's it. And here I thought I'd put that squalid business away for later, after opening night, but you're quite right. That's very likely what's driven me to this condition." "Do you want to talk about it?" I said almost reflexively. There I was, a hairdresser shrinking a world-famous shrink. "I doubt the maestro wants to hear about it," she said. Maestro Toscanelli said, "I know Marcella for many years. I can have no surprise with her. It is better if you talk." Daphne said, "Well then, here goes. Madama Ostinata made her daily grand descent from her rooms after coffee the other morning. She was glamorized and accessorized in her usual way, but that particular time I couldn't help noticing her brooch. It was solid gold, inlaid with onyx. It was a beautiful piece of jewelry, and I commented on it. Madame fondled it for a moment and then giggled coyly and said, "From an admirer." But, you see, I had recognized that brooch as one of my very own pieces, a gift from my first husband. I blurted, "Are you sane?" Daphne stopped me with her hand. That brooch had disappeared from my jewelry case long ago, and it was never recovered. When I saw it again the other morning, my first guess was that the stolen piece had been transported to Italy, where Marcella might have purchased it, or even received it as a gift. It was shocking, but then quite stimulating to think she had among the admirers international jewelry thieves. Italians are so hot-blooded. But then I had the next guess, and it was very unsettling. What if my second husband, Sid, had taken the brooch from my jewelry case and sold it? He was always jealous of my first marriage, when I had a young, vibrant body to give to my husband. Sid and I barely nuzzled, and once my imagination had been set on that path, I went all the way and wondered, had Sid given the brooch to Marcella himself? "It's so unlikely," I said, though my own imagination had often taken similar flights of absurdity unrelated to facts and logic. "Not at all," Daphne said quickly. "Sid was often in Milano on business. Perhaps he met Marcella there." "But you said he hated the opera." "Yes," said Daphne. "But now I see that his intense dislike of opera might have been a defense for his guilt over Marcella." Daphne got up and went to the fireplace. She held one hand toward the flames as if to warm it. Then she spoke her next words like a confession into the fire. I asked her how long she'd had the brooch. She hedged and said she didn't recall. I told her it reminded me of one of my first husband gave to me, his last gift to me, and she said, "How quaint. You must show it to me sometime." And I told her I didn't have it anymore, and she said with great theatrical pity in her voice, "Ah, I once had to sell some of my jewelry as well. It is horrible what a woman must do to survive." And I agreed with her. Horrible. The maestro said, "Perhaps Mr. Marcella does not know the brooch belongs to you." "Oh, she knows," said Daphne, turning back toward us. "She's too sly not to." But then, as if that whole business wasn't distressing enough, she had the gall to announce that something very personal and valuable was missing from her room, something that no one else would have any use for. "What was it?" I said. "Well, that's the final slap," said Daphne. "She wouldn't even tell me." I offered, "Maybe she knows the brooch is really yours, and that's her way of saying, don't try to get it back." "Or maybe there was nothing missing to begin with," said Daphne. "Which is probably more likely," I said. "Well, thank you for that, anyway," said Daphne. "I was beginning to wonder whose side you're on." "There's no question about that," I said. Daphne lowered her eyes. "I know," she said quietly. "I apologize." I gulped the remainder of my martini and then asked Daphne and the maestro if they wanted another cocktail. "Dinner will be ready soon," said Daphne. "I'm fine now." But the maestro held up his empty glass. "Please," he said. I took it along with mine to the liquor cart. There was just enough left in the decanter for half a drink each. As I refilled the glasses, I said, offhandedly, "Where's Bruce David?" "Oh, him," said Daphne with a dismissive wave of her hand. "He's taken to bed again, exhausted from rehearsal today." "But he's saying only one scene," I said. "I'm afraid the maestro was right," said Daphne. Her voice was calmer now, as though she'd finally recognized and surrendered to the facts of life. For an opera festival benefactress, if not a betrayed wife, she said, "Bruce David simply isn't strong enough for the opera." "Surely this isn't his first role," I said. "No," said Daphne, "but his previous experience has been in constant performance, and he's been fine there. Occasionally thrilling, in fact, but he's never sung a major role in a full stage production, and now it's clear that the stage action and the costumes and cues and everything else have been too much for him. With All he has to think about, he barely has the wits left to sing. The maestro nodded dolefully. I know this thing, he said. I have seen before. So would I thought in my abbreviated and imaginary melodrama at the cafe that afternoon. Parker appeared and announced the dinner was ready. The maestro and I toasted Daphne with our glasses, then downed the silver bullets. Then the three of us went to the dining room. On the long, hipple-white sideboard, Parker had laid a silver tray bearing a whole fish baked with its head intact. The huge sea creature was set upright on its ventral edge, its long body curved gracefully as though taking a leisurely swim among the braised vegetables and the wine sauce on its serving tray. "How wonderful," said Daphne. "Fresh sea bass." "It was caught this morning," said Parker, "and dressed this afternoon." "And eaten tonight, I thought." With surgical skill, Parker cleanly separated one whole side of the fish from its central bone. Then he cut the tender white flesh into suitable portions for the three of us at the table. The rest of the fish remained on the serving tray, its cooked eyes unfocused on our plates, its mouth agape, and its entire spine exposed against the other half of its body. It looked like something from a biology class, and my appetite was fading fast. We were just about to tuck away when Madame Ostanada's maid, Mathilda, appeared at the dining room doorway. The dim candlelight emphasized the hollows of her eyes and the points of her cheekbones. Her hair was pulled back into a chignon, so tight that I wondered how she managed to talk. Her teeth were clenched and her lips barely moved. "Madame wishes no further disturbance tonight." "We hardly intended to," said Daphne. "Is she ill?" "She is resting," said Mathilda. "She has taken her sleeping potion." Then she glared accusingly at Daphne and added, "Madama required an extra dosage tonight because she was so upset today." Daphne said, "Well, I hope Madama is feeling better tomorrow, and I hope she is able to sing after taking all that medication." The maestro shot a cryptic glance at Mathilda, who raised one eyebrow and then nodded solemnly back to him. It all looked absurdly comical, like a travesty of Mrs. Danvers and Rebecca. The maestro said to Daphne, "I think Marcella will not sing here again." Daphne said, "You mean at the festival next season?" "I should say not after today's performance." "I mean," said the maestro, portentously, "no more." I thought I heard sounds of distant thunder, but then realized it was my stomach, newly impatient for dead fish. The last food I'd had, if you could call it that, was at the cafe that afternoon, and though mocha nucleal tart may tarry at the hips, it doesn't stick to the ribs. Daphne shook her head at the maestro's remark and said, "If Madama chooses not to sing, then who is being unprofessional?" No sooner had she said it than she clucked her tongue. "Silly me," she said. "I should realize I'm dealing with a child now." Then in a last attempt at hospitality, Daphne asked Mathilda, "Would Madama like her dinner brought to her room?" But instead of answering Daphne, Mathilda's eyes wandered to the sideboard, where the sea bass had been laid open for human consumption. As if responding to the dead animal's extinct gaze, her own dark eyes bugged out and her body became rigid. Then she said to Daphne, "We are not hungry," and she departed quickly. After that, dinner went nearly without a hitch. Daphne fretted a bit about what would happen to the festival's opening production if Madama Ostanada broke her contract and refused to sing. But the maestro placated her by contending that April Kilkis would sing Amelia beautifully and that the production of Balo would be a great success. "Even without a world-known diva in the role," said Daphne. "More important to worry," said the maestro, "is who will sing Ricardo." The maestro's allegiance to his singers had changed camps. "But Bruce David hasn't canceled," said Daphne. The maestro shook his head. "You must take him out." Did he realize what he'd said in slang? After the fish and vegetables came a salad, followed by strawberry shortcake with homemade biscuits. I had 2 helpings. Then we went our ways to bed. I read for a while, but couldn't get sleepy. I kept thinking about the dead fish and the way it seemed to be watching me eat its body. Then I thought about Rafik and what he might be doing in Paris. I took out the aerogram to add some more to it, something beyond the weather, something about life and love. But instead I found myself worried that I might be falling out of love with Rafik, because I was having so much difficulty being honest and open with my pen. Maybe it was the specter of his parents' imminent disapproval of me. Or maybe it was Rafik's very absence that caused the confusion. The withdrawal symptoms, his love and his body were like an addictive drug, whose presence dictated use and indulgence, and whose absence often caused a temporary anguish that usually gave way to independence and strength. It was shocking to think maybe I secretly wanted to leave him, but truthfully, I enjoyed the exhilaration of being on my own, to work and to investigate and to meet people without having to answer the call of love. The responsibility of it, oh, ugly word. Maybe I was just projecting my old fear that Rafik would ultimately leave me. But maybe that too was just a projection of my desire to flee from him. Caught in a vortex of worry that night, I could manage only a continuation of the weather report to my lover. But alas, no love. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.